Okay, I think we're live. All right, cool. All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session on the topic In the Grind Why Automation is Your Secret Weapon to Real Connection. I'm Chavi, Content Manager at Recruit CRM, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. While I'll mostly be behind the scenes, our expert will be taking the spotlight. Joining us today is Andrew Osborne. Let me give you a quick introduction. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Levio Consulting, a specialized AI consultancy that helps recruiting teams consolidate their disconnected tools into one intelligent system. With a background in software engineering and a deep focus on AI powered solutions for the recruiting industry, Andrew has over 5 years of experience driving innovation in recruitment technology. So, welcome, Andrew. Do you want to say a quick hi to the audience and a bit about what we'll be discussing today?
Yes, thank you very much for that introduction. You pretty much said most of what I would have said, but yeah, so I'm Andrew. I'm working specifically with recruiting firms in this time, just helping recruiters do more of what they signed up to do, allowing recruiters to focus on relationship tasks and less on task-based administrative tasks. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And today we're pretty much talking mainly about how recruiters can be using automation, using AI to really drive forward their day-to-day and focus on what really moves the needle in their business. So yeah, should be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it today, Shavi.
All right, awesome, Andrew. So, I guess with that, we can get started with the session. And I'll just throw my first question your way. So, Andrew, what are some of the most time consuming tasks for recruitment consultants that can be easily automated, and how can this impact their day to day work?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's interesting. I want to start off by saying, as someone coming in from quite a technical background, of course, we always look for the most quote unquote groundbreaking things to automate, the things that look the coolest and the funnest. And what I'm beginning to realize is with most recruiters, it really starts with those simple automations and simple systems. The most important thing is updating that CRM. And most recruiters hate to do this. Most recruiters even forget to do this. And it's quite frankly the most important part of being a recruiter. The more data you have in your CRM, the more you're able to take decisive action on based of who to reach out to or how to sort of deal with your ATS based on what you know in your CRM. So I would say that is probably one of the most time consuming tasks. And it's also something that is relatively straightforward to also automate as well. Of course, with like automation first tools like Recruit CRM, you can do this relatively straightforward. And I'm seeing teams just from this small automation being able to get huge impact. We're talking, and let me start by saying this. When you look at AI is amazing with unstructured data. Us humans are not good with unstructured data. We like structured columns, ways that we can simply filter through a list to be able to get a better understanding of what we're looking at. But with like sort of CRM note-taking automations, we can take this unstructured data, turn it into more structured data, and update a CRM automatically so that when someone else on the team comes to look for that information, it's already there for them. The recruiter doesn't need to spend their time fiddling through columns, and they can fast forward and actually have more screening and more calls with their clients and candidates in question. So I would say that's the most simplest and time consuming sort of workflow that recruiters are really looking to automate these days.
All right, Andrew. My next question for you would be, can you share some examples of how shifting from task focused recruiting to relationship focused recruiting has worked for teams that you worked with?
Mm. So when you say so from task focus to relationship focus, that's the question, right?
Yep. Because without AI and without technology, teams focus more on task and repetitive work. But when you automate a lot of your work, I guess you shift more towards the relationship and human aspect of recruiting. So how would you say that has impacted with the teams that you worked with?
For sure. I think that a lot of recruiters kind of get into their role for their amazing relationship skills, but they often find themselves being task administrators. And I think taking a shift towards relationship focused recruiting, it just really allows them to let their emotional intelligence run loose. And like I said in the question previously, just being able to do more of what they're really good at. They can take the time to make calls and actually market map as opposed to sitting there and doing mundane stuff that AI and automation is really good at. Now, I think the most important sort of thing that I see moving forward is recruiters being able to actually take more time sitting down with candidates, better preparing candidates for next step interviews, sitting down with clients, being sort of that talent advisor, which we can speak about a bit later with their clients, as opposed to having spending most of their day just having to keep up with the bunch of tasks that they have on their to-do list and more time building those deeper relationships. I think recruiting is so important. that initial touch point you can have with one candidate on day one may not actually come back to add value to you in for the next year. But the fact that you took the time to sit there with that candidate and understand their needs could come back to help you in a year's time. Now, for most recruiters, they don't really want to do that stuff. Why? Because they're spending so much time doing those tasks, admin that is taking up their time. So I would say most of these teams are being able to use these tools to focus on relationship building because the tasks are kind of stripped away as the AI and automation can pretty much handle them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So, Andrew, how do you see automation transforming the role of a recruiter in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? And are
Mm.
there any specific tasks you think will always require a human touch?
Yeah, great question. Um, to answer that question bluntly rather, I couldn't tell you where AI is going in the next 5 years, let alone where recruiting is going in the next 5 years. But what I can say is things that will never ever be replaced by an AI is things like screening, for example. We're talking real candidate screening. Having spoken with one of my really close clients that I've been working with for quite some time now, there's certain elements of sitting on a call and screening a candidate that an AI is never going to be able to replace. And I do see a big shift towards these AI tools that kind of do the initial voice calling screening. And I'm not a huge fan of it, just mainly because there's ways someone uses their body language, ways someone speaks, the tonality that they use, which I cannot ever see AI becoming to get to terms with, that a recruiter is able to do far more better. So I would say that's a huge one. Those raw like phone face-to-face screenings is huge. I think AI is amazing for the pre-screening. When it comes to the actual screening, I'm not too convinced, and I don't think it ever will be, because of that human sort of interaction that you're able to see on a call, like you can see with me right now. The second thing I will tap into is also, like I said previously, being a talent advisor. Um, a client comes to you, I don't know, maybe a VP at a SaaS company says that we're looking for our first, maybe founding AE, so to speak, and we want them to fit one, two, three, four traits and criteria. Now, as a talent advisor, a client, they can really combat that client and say, "Are you sure this is someone you need?" Well, we've spoken with 5 other people in your niche, and actually, what they're seeing is X, Y, Z. I see recruiters taking a big emphasis to becoming advisors where they can sit there with their clients and help them best. And I just do not see AI being able to take that role. So I would say those are the two main things. Having a cognitively switched on partner, in what I just mentioned, and also someone that can sit across someone on a screening interview and really kind of look at their patterns and their almost how they're sort of acting on the call to know are they really a good fit for the role in question.
Hmm. Yes. Andrew, what are some common misconceptions about automation and recruitment, and why do you think some recruiters fear it might make the process less personal?
Mm, mm. I've got an interesting answer for this one. I think it's our fault. So our fault or the AI gurus. I wouldn't really class myself as one of those, but it's no there's no sort of is no what it's not hidden if you go onto LinkedIn and you'll see a bunch of people showing you these crazy complex workflows on these tools like NAN, Zapier, Make.com, and it's quite frightening to look at. And I think for most recruiters who aren't incredibly technically savvy, they're looking at this and that's what comes in their mind when they think of AI. When they think of AI, they think of these very, very complex workflows that once you use them actually don't really add little to no value. So I think that is a huge problem for a lot of recruiters is what they're seeing isn't actually what's happening in practice. They see people almost clickbaiting AI when really and truly AI comes to building very, very simple workflows. Like I mentioned, you're taking notes and making it into structured data, or being able to shortlist effectively and structuring some email into a nice draft for a client. All of these very, very small workflows, but they're highly, highly effective, is what really drives the needle forward. But people aren't seeing that when they open their LinkedIn. They're seeing these very complex things. They're almost seeing this autonomous agent that can just do everything. And I want to make one point very, very clear. And it's something I've learned very recently. Recruiters have 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience in very, very niche industries. We're talking life sciences, 20 years of experience in life sciences. They've got a huge valuable connection. The last thing they want to do is give that up to an AI agent and let it run wild and do whatever it wants to do, messaging whoever it wants to message, saying whatever it wants to say. That is very scary for recruiters. They kind of want to be in the loop, so they're able to kind of dictate what steps the AI takes before it goes off and messages people. Which is why if you see my content, I'm very big on talking about AI co-pilots and not AI agents. I think the recruiter needs to be in the loop at every step of the way. And what you're seeing online is those autonomous agents that can do everything, and you can go sit on a beach in Bali, which I'm not really a fan of. So I'd say that's why there's quite a lot of skepticism right now.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Andrew, could you walk us through the key automation tools that are game changers in recruitment? What's your take on balancing automation and personalization in like candidate engagement?
What was the last part you said? Balancing automation with personalization, sorry?
In candidate engagement.
Okay, interesting. Okay, very interesting. What do you mean when you say candidate engagement? Anything in specific that I should talk about there?
So for candidate engagement, we're mainly referring to, let's say, any kind of communications happening with candidates, how to keep them engaged and warm in the pipeline, something of that sort. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So okay, I want so in terms of tools, I mean, guys, we're looking at one Recruit CRM, amazing tool when it comes to being an ATS and a CRM, and it's very AI first as well. Now, in line with Recruit CRM, I want to give an actual tangible example. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I heard quite an alarming stat, which is according to statistics, 66% of placed candidates already come from your existing ATS. And with the clients I've been working with, they don't sort of follow that kind of flow. So what I mean by that is the majority of recruiters, when they get a new search, they're going straight to LinkedIn Recruiter or they're going straight to Sales Nav and they're building a list and reaching out to people that are cold. But oftentimes there's very, very hidden gems in your existing ATS that you should really be tapping into. These people are warm. They've spoken to you before. They may be open, actively looking for a role, but you just need to find them. Now, traditionally, that has been relatively hard. As I mentioned before, structured data, someone that has X years of experience, they're based in X location, it doesn't really tell you how good of a fit someone is for a role. Now, the good thing is with tools like Recruit CRM, especially you guys' API, which we can talk about, is you now have the ability to take a list of candidates, run it against a JD using AI to actually see, okay, this person might be a fit from a Boolean perspective, but from an actual semantic perspective, and I want to go into that a bit in a minute, how well of a fit is that person? Now, the reason I say that is because before you go out to make any cold search, you can quite literally run that in your existing ATS to already uncover people right under your nose that are a good fit for the search that you're about to run. So I think AI heavily increases the candidate engagement. I also feel like it stops you wasting time on reaching out to people you should have never reached out to. So back to my previous point, and you guys are really leading the way here. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but Recruit CRM have recently released their AI sourcing feature. Now, why that's so amazing is because I think the Boolean search is slowly dying. I think it's dying in searches. I think it's dying in prospecting as well. Because yes, we can look for candidates based in Texas that are sales or account executives, but you can't really do much else with a Boolean search, right? Let's say the client is looking for someone that has had experience ramping up teams from the beginning to large teams. They know how to handle pressure. Or how do we do that with a Boolean search? You can't really. The great thing with AI, as it works semantically, it can look at a profile and give meaning as to why this person could be a good fit. So, and off the back of that, you can reach out to them. So I think AI really stops a lot of inefficient outreach. We won't be reaching out to people, sending emails that we should never have really sent, having to reply to people we shouldn't have reached out to in the first place. So I think that AI only better matches who we spend our time focusing on. So I think it's a big plus for recruiters.
Right, thanks, Andrew. Andrew, when implementing automation, how do you ensure, like, how can recruiters ensure it doesn't reduce the quality of candidate relationships? So, what kind of checks should be in place to ensure this doesn't happen?
Great question. I mean, it's pretty much back to the point that I made previously. I'm really against this word autonomous. I don't know why you'd want anything to be autonomous, especially in recruiting when we're dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. I look at everything from a co-pilot point of view. That you shouldn't be letting AI run every single step of the way without some recruiter being able to check in and say, yes, I'm happy with this. So I'll give you a great example that I spoke about earlier. Loads of teams are seeing the importance of AI sourcing, especially the initial sourcing. So taking a job description, being able to build a list of people that seem to be a good fit from that job description. Of course, using Boolean searches, like if they're based in Texas, but also using more semantic information, like what exactly does this person seem like they can lead a team like the JD is asking for. Now, what a lot of people you see doing with these crazy workflows online is they say, look, you can source people and you can reach out to them automatically. And when they reply, we can use agents to go back and forth and book them into a meeting. And the agent can even take the screening interview, and then the agent can send them to the client. It's very, very risky. And it's something that I heavily taught my clients against. I understand why people like this. It seems cool. You can sit back and do no work, but I do not think it's effective. We like to have guardrails and almost like checkpoints. So I'll give you a great example. After you do this AI sourcing, instead of just reaching out to these candidates straight away, having a step where they get added to your back to your ATS in a certain stage. So maybe they get added to a stage saying ready for outreach. Now a recruiter will get pinged in Slack saying, sourcing list is ready. They'll then take a look, go through them, make sure they're actually genuinely happy with these lists of people, maybe tinker any messaging that's been created as well. And then when they move them off to another stage, it then triggers that automation to send a message. I think that's a very, very small tweak to a workflow, which can stop this whole AI doing everything and potentially upsetting a lot of people and breaking some relationships that you may have built with candidates in your years of experience as a recruiter.
All right. Andrew, in your experience, how do consultants feel when they're given tools to automate their tasks? What's the reaction from the team after the initial shift?
This is a funny question. I don't know, like, holy crap. Like, I've been on calls, I've got multiple recordings of people just being quite amazed by the things that we're able to do now. And I think, to piggyback off of that, I think what's crazy now is hearing lots of teams saying, like, I don't know how we managed before this. Like, I don't know how we were able to handle this many candidates before we had these systems. And there's a big emphasis to AI. A lot of the time, I'm just talking like basic automation. It doesn't even always have to have AI implemented. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't need AI implemented. I'm talking very, very simple stuff that just take away that mental bandwidth that 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 usual consultants have to worry about every single day. So, like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. Just having smart systems in place that when you move a candidate somewhere, it will do this. A very, very good example: when a candidate has been hired after one day, ask for a trust pilot review, having a simple automation instead of you having that sort of that checkbox in your head to be ticked off. You just have smart systems that work for you. And to go back to the question, it's just most teams are just amazed that they were able to perform before they had these things in place. It's quite bizarre, honestly.
All right, Andrew, I love that. So my next question to you would be, how do you measure success when making this shift from admin heavy to human centered recruiting? Are there any key metrics or KPIs teams should focus on?
So the main question is around. Could you repeat the question there? Sorry.
Yep, of course. So how do you measure success when making this shift from admin heavy to human centered recruiting? Are there any particular KPIs or metrics that teams should be focusing on?
That's a great question. And in fact, I've even got some that we've been tracking with a client of interest. Um, so cool. So let me start by saying what we shouldn't really be tracking, like maybe recruiters used to be. And again, I want to prefix this. I don't have a extensive background in recruiting. It's only very recently, since the past 8 months, that I've been tailoring very heavy to recruiters. But I have the luxury of every week speaking with very, very experienced recruiters, some that have been in the space for 35 plus years. In fact, some that have been in the space for 2 years, but they're growing very, very quickly and they're almost using tech to be able to get an edge and an advantage. And I was hearing from a recruiter recently last week that one of the things they used to track was how much time a consultant spent in their ATS. I don't know if you ever heard of that before, Shavi, but some teams do track that, if you're aware.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So some teams, and that is something that I don't think we should be tracking at all. I think that, back to your question, almost invokes a tasks-based recruiting sort of framework as opposed to a relationship-based recruiting framework. I think the things we should be tracking now is, okay, how many searches can each consultant manage, right? So with better tech, realistically, each consultant should be able to handle more searches now because they have tech helping them do shortlisting. They're having tech helping them understand who's the best person to reach out to, and they have tech being able to take notes from a candidate call and update the relevant fields in a ATS. Another thing which is quite similar, how much each consultant can bill per head as well, because with more tech, they should be able to have more time to focus on like needle moving activities. They should be able to have more client check-ins with their client and better understand the description of the role. Or they should be able to now focus on BD, which we can get into a bit later on. That's another big one. I'd say another one, which we kind of spoken about before, was candidate engagement quality. So what I mean by that is like how many candidates. So how are our response rates looking in our emails? Again, a client of mine, a big issue they had all the way back in around March was they were reaching out to loads of candidates, many of which just were not a good fit. And now you have to spend. Now it's a two-way problem now, because now you need to spend time responding to candidates that you should have never messaged, so it'll kind of waste your time. But also the candidates feel a bit almost like confused as to why was I even sort of reached out to about this role when it clearly doesn't fit my area of expertise. Or they feel disappointed when now you no longer take them on to the next stage of an interview. So it's a bit of a loss for everyone. So tracking what is the engagement rates of your emails or whatever, it should improve as you're now using smart sourcing systems to make sure instead of reaching out to 500 average fits, you're reaching out to 150 perfect fits for your role. So that's a big one to track. And again, another one I would say is NPS scores as well, on the client side and candidate side, because ideally you should be matching better candidates for your clients, and your candidates should be happy that most of the ones you come in contact with, you're able to find them a good role. And there's one last one that I think flies under the radar, which I don't think many people are speaking about, but I think is one thing that most executives at recruiting firms, they face a challenge on a daily basis, and that is your consultant satisfaction. So the people that your employees, your consultants, what is their satisfaction? Like, are they enjoying their work? Because we need to remember, guys, recruiting is an incentive-based role. Like, people are paid commissions for the deals they're able to close and the candidates they're able to place. If a recruiter does not feel like you are building a company that's enabling them to do their job better, they're not going to be satisfied. They're going to leave, or they're going to make it very, very known in their end of year reports. So I think that's a big one that goes under the radar. So those are the main things that I think relationship-based recruiting firms should be tracking.
All right, thank you, Andrea. I love that. I think we'll just have one more question from me, and then we'll open the floor for some questions from the audience. Given the time that we have. So, Andrea, my last question to you would be: what would be your top advice for agencies that are hesitant to adopt automation, especially those that believe it might complicate their workflow?
Great question. Great question. It's a question I get. It's an objection that I get a lot when I'm having conversations with amazing recruiters. The main thing I would say is it goes back to my point before, which I blame the gurus. I blame the gurus for their complex workflows that makes recruiters feel like automation needs to work this way when it just doesn't. Um, and I'd probably say you're probably thinking too far ahead. I think start small. Like I said at the beginning of the call, start with the very, very mundane task that your team or yourself spend doing a lot, which is a call finishes, you need to update the CRM with the fields based on what someone said. Okay, well, you know that you have a note taker, you use Fireflies, you use MetaViewer. All of these things have automations now. You can integrate it into Recruit CRM to be able to get the call transcript, and you can use the workflows feature inside of Recruit CRM, or use a very, very simple sort of Zapier NAN workflow to take that transcript and bring it into structured data. Start there. Very, very simple. It's not going to get thousands of likes on LinkedIn, but it's probably the most effective workflow you can build. So that's the main thing I would say, guys. So just start small. Map out, get a Miro board, map out what takes you a lot of time, or better yet, this is BD. We didn't get to speak about much about BD today, but I'd love to in the future. Think about manual ways in which you've been able to bring in pipeline and deal flow. Maybe you scroll through LinkedIn on a regular basis and you see, oh, my recent placement has just moved on to a new role. So now I'm going to go and contact the old company who now might need a new person. So now you've mapped it out manually. Now you can build a simple automation to do it on a weekly basis. So that's what I would say. Start small and automate what you're currently doing manually. Don't try to do extra things that you were never doing in the first place.
All right, Andrew, I love that.
Mm.
All right, so I think we've wrapped up the main event, and now we'll open the floor for some questions. So if anybody has any questions for Andrew, if anything sparked curiosity throughout the discussion, now's the time that you guys can drop it in the chat, and we'll pick up some of those questions right now.
Ask.
Cool. So we'll wait for like a few seconds to see if anybody's dropping any questions. Okay. In the time that we get some questions from the audience, Andrew, actually I had one more this just
Mhm.
sparked, it just came to my mind. So looking at the long term impact, how do you think automating repetitive tasks ultimately affects the candidate experience and like a recruitment agency's bottom line?
Mm, um, got it. So, how does it affect candidates' experience
Experience.
and the agency's bottom line?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it goes back to I'm almost repeating myself here, but maybe because of the importance of what I'm saying is it comes back to the point where if you build solid systems, you build effective like AI sourcing, like again, Recruit CRM has this now baked into their system where you're able to source candidates that are relevant for a job description, meaning that they are much more likely to get a role, meaning that they actually feel a lot more heard and understood because you're reaching out to the right people. That will then in turn improve your candidate experience. And now when it comes to bottom line, I heard this in a Quill AI. They had an interview and one of the guys at the team, and he said nowadays with AI, you could either use AI to either do 30% more of what your team is currently doing, or you could do the same thing with a 30% downsized team. So it really comes down to your preference. And I think most teams, the issue with recruiting, in fact, the issue of most service-based businesses is where we've mostly been used to, in order to grow revenue, we need to grow a headcount. And that's no longer really becoming the case. The case is now we can have lean A players that are A players and they're strategic and use these AI systems, co-pilots around us that can help us be 30% more efficient. So we don't need to hire at the rate that most teams are hiring. Because in recruiting, it's a known thing. Profit margins are incredibly low in this space. So how do we build a more sustainable, cash flow heavy recruiting business? So I'd say I think that briefly answers your question.
Thanks, Andrew. So we do have a couple of questions from some attendees, and I think some of these we discussed earlier, but maybe some of these people join later, but like we can add some more information to this as well. So we have a question from an attendee. They're asking, what advice do you have for recruitment agencies that are hesitant to adopt automation in their processes? I think we
Yeah,
did discuss it briefly. Yeah.
yeah, we did. Yes, I'll just repeat. Again, start small, and understand that you're not behind. You may feel behind by what you're seeing on LinkedIn, but and I can tell you for free, I'm going to whisper something. Most people I speak with, they haven't done much when it comes to AI. And I think a lot of teams tend to think we're behind. Everyone's doing this, everyone's doing that. We need this, and we need it now. But ultimately, most teams are very hesitant, just like you mentioned yourself, because you're seeing so much on the internet that's kind of confusing you. So what would I say to most teams? I would tell them to look at what you currently do that is very, very effective. Maybe there's a certain workflow, a BD workflow. Maybe every day you go on LinkedIn and you search this and you search that and you search that. You put it into a process map on Miro, and then you say, okay, well, what are the required tools that I need to begin to automate every step of this? And then there you have it, a very, very simple workflow. So that's what I would say.
All right, thanks, Andrew. The next question, again, I think we covered this earlier, but it's like they're asking, what are the most time-consuming administrative tasks in recruitment that you think we can actively automate effectively through, AI and automation? Yeah.
Yeah. So again, updating that CRM, very, very boring task, but it's the most effective. And maybe let me give you a reason why it's the most effective. Everyone talks AI, AI, AI. AI is nothing without data, and data comes from talking to candidates, and talking to candidates means notes. And so, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say here is, okay, we need to be able to have a system that makes it easier for consultants to take their calls, turn into structured data, put it inside of a CRM so that AI can even take advantage of that data. If your data is not in place, you shouldn't even be thinking about using AI. So again, back to answer your question, it is updating that CRM. That is the most difficult, time-consuming task, I'd say.
All right. And do we have another question? So you mentioned you want to talk a bit more about business development. So we actually have a relevant question.
Cool.
We have an attendee asking, do you have any clever tips and tricks about how to do effective biz dev, apart from the one that you just mentioned? Also, what other things you reckon could this recruitment co-pilot of sorts could do for us, which we haven't thought about yet?
Okay, you got me thinking here. So, any clever tips and tricks about how to do effective biz dev? It honestly, Ariane, it goes back to what I just mentioned, which is there's got to be something that you're currently doing that's worked a few times now, but it just takes a long time. It takes a long time, or it's something that because you're flooded with task, you're flooded with messaging candidates and flooded with updating your CRM. You just don't have the time to do. So like, I'll give a tangible example of in fact a prospect that I spoke with a few weeks ago. And I kind of just I mentioned it before, which was he was scrolling through LinkedIn, and he had literally seen that someone had put a LinkedIn post saying, I've just left this company and I'm going to a new company. And he was like, hey, this is someone that I literally placed 3 years ago. 3 years, that's a good tenure, which means that the person that he placed did really, really well. So what do you then do? You then go back to your previous client and say, hey, Josh has just left and he was there for 3 years. I'm sure you're happy with him. Do you want someone else like Josh? Right? It's a very, very simple, it sounds very, very simple in practice, but it's incredibly effective. And you know it works because you do it time and time and time again. And I think with biz dev, a lot of people get excited about what they see online, but no one does that in practice because it doesn't work. But I'm sure you, Ariane, have a little something that you do. And a lot of the time it's within your network. I want to say with recruiting, I'm sure you've tried it. It's very, very difficult to do recruiting. It's more like a demand capture kind of thing. It's people need it when they need it. So you should be tapping into your existing network more. So you want to think about what you do on a daily basis, who you look at, why you look at them, any industry news, and sort of begin to map it out. And from there, you kind of know what it is that you need to build. Now, in regards to your second question about other things you reckon could this do for which you haven't thought about yet. Hmm. Recruitment. Okay. I've got something. I think now, and Shavi said it at the beginning, and I know we're running out of time, but I want to keep this brief. A lot of what we do at Levio is helping people connect their 7 disconnected tools. So what I mean by that is your ATS doesn't really talk to your CRM doesn't really talk to your outreach platform, your outreach platform doesn't really talk to your job board, and all of these things you're paying hundreds in licenses, but they're not talking to one another. I think we're seeing now with data and AI a real effective way for teams to be using the data in their ATS to drive their business development. So what do I mean by that? And I'll give you a tangible example. So I have a client, they're based in Copenhagen, Scandinavian market, they hire for sales roles. So now what we do is we take a very like NPC led approach now, where we look at his ATS on a weekly basis, and based off of his ATS and based off of the candidates he has, then dictates kind of who we reach out to. So what I mean by that is if he has a bunch of sales professionals in the insurance space that are actively looking to move their role, that then dictates what open jobs we're searching for and who we're reaching out to, so we can kind of have an MPC campaign. So what I mean by that is no tool should ever be disconnected now. We live in an age where you've got these orchestration tools like NAN, where you can connect this to this to this to this to this. I think that you're going to be seeing a lot more AI co-pilots that are able to pluck in from one place and move somewhere else and lead to very much more personalized outbound, as opposed to generic emails that you kind of see in your junk every day. I hope that helps. There's a ton more, man, but you've caught me off guard. Maybe check my YouTube. I'm sure you'll find some.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I think you answered it very well. All right, with that, I think we're going to conclude the event. Thank you for the amazing session, Andrew. Do you have any closing remarks for the audience before we wrap up?
Any closing remarks? Start slow. Start slow. You're not behind because again, I speak with recruitment firms every week, and most of them know about these tools, but they don't use these tools because they're scared to. Again, you've built up years of experience in your niche, and the last thing you want to do is ruin it because an AI agent is just doing whatever it wants to do. So start small. Don't look to automate everything. Automate what currently works today, but just takes you a long period of time, and from there slowly work your way up. Yeah, that's what I say.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So yeah, with that, we're going to conclude the session. So don't forget to connect with Andrew on LinkedIn and check out his company, Levio Consulting. I've dropped the links in the chat on all the platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook.
Mhm.
If you'd like to learn a bit more about Recruit CRM, you can check out our website. And if you're interested in exploring our ATS and CRM, you can also book a free demo today. And we'll walk you through everything. We also offer no commitment, unlimited free trial. So you can check out the tool firsthand there as well. And don't forget to connect with us on social media to stay updated on our upcoming live events and other webinars that we have coming up and all the exciting news. So all of these links are currently in the chat for you to engage with. And yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you again at the next event.